Communication, culture, and diversity is a very complex relationship. Every day we are exposed to a variety of different people. We encounter diversity in the classroom, in the workplace, through social media, and at times even in our own families. Remember, we want to be competent communicators. And when it comes to culture and diversity, we must show sensitivity and respect for others. Throughout this chapter, we're going to look at the definition of culture, the dimensions of culture, cultural demographics, physical and cognitive diversity, as well as discussing, what makes someone a competent intercultural and even co-cultural communicator. So, what is culture? Culture is defined as the distinctive ideas, customs, social behavior, products, or a way of life of a particular nation, society, people, or even period. I had one person explain it to me this way. Culture to people is like water to a fish. You're swimming in your own culture, so much so that you don't realize that you're even in it. It just becomes a part of your norm. It's usually when we leave our culture and go to a different one that we realize, hey, my normal isn't everybody else's normal. What I consider everyday life isn't everybody else's everyday life. Keep in mind that different groups can have their own culture. Nations can have a culture. Regions can have a culture. Different ethnic groups can have a culture. Religions can have their own culture. Even different organizations and jobs can have their own culture. Culture is pretty complicated, and it's such a powerful component of human development in life that it definitely becomes a communication issue as well. Culture is going to influence our self-image, our priorities, and even our personality. So when we think about culture, we can't just think about our own culture. We have to think about cultures that exist outside of our own. A competent communicator is going to strive to have good intercultural communication. Being aware that my A-OK is not A-OK in somebody else's culture. It may even be offensive. And then being able to adapt to the different intercultural aspects that you encounter. That's going to show a lot of competence. Keep in mind that there's usually one large culture in a particular area. That's what we refer to as a dominant culture. You can usually tell what the dominant culture of a society is by looking at the co-cultures. Keep in mind that the co-cultures are smaller groups that exist within and alongside larger cultural groups. For example, the Amish. Here in America, most of us are very into our own technology. It's such a part of our dominant culture that someone who doesn't take part in technology is seen as a little outside the norm, even considered weird. But the Amish live a pretty simple life with no technology. Again, they would be a co-culture in this case. Be aware that you can simultaneously belong to several cultures and co-cultures at the same time. Sometimes those cultures and co-cultures will get along perfectly, and other times, those cultures and co-cultures will clash. And when that happens, we are conflicted between the cultures which we belong. Another aspect to consider is Hofsteade dimensions of culture. One of those dimensions is high versus low power distance. Power distance refers to the level of inequality between high and low power members of a culture. So let's say you're in a high power distance group, and your boss makes a decision. Well, in this case, your boss is so high up. He holds the power, right? You're not going to go up to him and talk to him about the policy that he made. that would be out of the norm. But if you were in a low power distance, most whole power in this case, and you would feel that you live in a democratic society, you should go up to the boss and tell them what you think of that particular policy. Then there's high versus low uncertainty avoidance. Uncertainty avoidance refers to the tolerance for ambiguity in a given culture. So if you live in a high uncertainty avoidance culture, then there's going to be little tolerance for ambiguity. Someone dyes their hair blue. Every single person is going to look at that blue-haired person and think, they just do that? What are they thinking? That's so unnatural. Why would you do that? In a high uncertainty avoidance culture, you don't want to be different. You want to be the same. You want to be like other people. In a low uncertainty avoidance culture, okay, you dyed your hair blue. That's different. Go for it. Be your own person. Yeah, it's a little risky. Your hair may fall out, but why not? Or if something changes all of a sudden, let's just go with the flow on it. Then another dimension is the individualist versus the collectivist. The individualist is going to be more of a me-focused culture, whereas the collectivist is going to be more of a group-focused culture. So let's say your parents tell you that they want you to become a lawyer, and you really don't want to be a lawyer. Well, in the individualist culture, you're going to do what you want to do. You're going to chase your dream, because it's a dream you've always wanted. You're going to try to compete with any and every person to get your dream accomplished. In a collectivist culture, you're going to do what your family wants from you. Because you're thinking, well, not only is this for me, but this is also for my family. I need to bring them honor. Then there's masculine versus feminine. And usually when people hear this, they think about, well, male and female. But that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the distribution of emotional roles between the sexes and the different values of men and women. In the masculine culture, status and competition are highly prized. Both men and women will want to be in a higher status and will compete to make sure that they get to that higher status. So that nice shiny corner office that everyone has their eye on, you want it in a masculine culture, and you're going to do what you got to do to get it. In the feminine culture, there's more cooperation and consensus. It's not about beating the other person, it's about finding what's best for the group. Another dimension is the long-term versus short-term orientation. If you have a long-term orientation, you're more future-focused. Cultures with long-term orientation are pragmatic and focused on future rewards. That may mean saving, so having a very clear budget and sticking with that budget. Maybe adapting and changing to the different technology that comes out, so that way you can always be on the cutting edge. But if you have a short-term orientation, you're more present, even past-focused. So these cultures usually have an emphasis on national pride and tradition. You do things out of social obligation. You want to save face in the here and now. Keep in mind what's considered long-term and short-term is going to vary for different cultures. Because for some, long-term may mean 10 years out. For others, it may mean 10 days out. Another dimension is indulgent versus restrained culture. And this really refers to how much a culture allows for individual freedom versus rigid rule following. So an indulgent culture is going to be all about the gratification of your desires. Have fun, live your life. The common acronym YOLO, you only live once, is definitely something we can apply here to an indulgent culture. You want to go on vacation? You want to have some leisure time? You want to express those emotions and thoughts? Indulgent culture? Do it. In a restrained culture, they have strict social norms and don't really do things that are just out of want and desire. Usually you try to curb those things, because just saying I want this and I want that could be seen as rude. Here's another dimension that was not created by Hofsteade but was created by Edward T. Hall. And you realize maybe there's one more thing we should mention about dimensions of culture, and that's high context versus low context. So if you live in a high context culture, there's an emphasis on the nonverbal actions and the situation to help shape what you think about the situation. Whereas if you live in a low context culture, there's an emphasis on the words said. So let's imagine that I, your teacher, want you to take out the trash because it's getting pretty full. In a high context culture, I could say, wow, that trash can is looking so full right now. And it would be up to you at that point to decide, well, this person is an authority over me. The authority just said that the trash is full. I don't think they're happy about that. Maybe I should take it out. Whereas in a low context culture, it would be expected that if I was unhappy with the trash level, I should point to someone or call on someone directly and have them take out the trash. Again, emphasis on the word said. If you didn't tell me to do it, I'm not going to do it. So when we look at all of these different dimensions of culture, we see that it's so easy to how one person could come from a high context culture, one person can come from a low context culture. Someone could be more masculine oriented, someone could be more feminine oriented, someone could be more individualistic, someone could be more collectivistic. Every single culture is somewhere along this continuum at different areas in different combinations. With all those different combinations out there, man, there's a lot of different things to communicate and ways to communicate.